Hello all, welcome back to operating system course. So in the last video we had seen the basic introduction, then we had talked about what operating systems do and the computer system architecture. In that we had seen single processing, multiprocessing systems, advantages and types of multiprocessing systems, clustered and dual core systems, right? So we will now talk about operating system structure. Okay, and we'll try to cover as many things as possible in this till management. Okay, so first thing today we will start is operating system structure. Now that we have discussed the basic information about the computer system organization and the architecture, we are now ready to talk more about the operating systems. Now, this operating system it provides the environment within which the programs are executed. So one of the most important aspects of operating system is the ability to multi-program. So multi-program is needed for efficiency. Okay, a single program or single user cannot keep the CPU and the IO devices busy all the times. Single users frequently they have multiple programs running. So your multi-programming it increases the CPU utilization by organizing the jobs so that the CPU always has one to execute. So here is the idea behind that. You can see in this diagram, right? The operating system it keeps several jobs in the memory. This is the memory, okay? And this is the operating system which keeps several jobs in the memory simultaneously. So in general what will happen is this is your main memory and this is very small to accommodate all the jobs. So first thing what will happen is the jobs are initially kept in the disk and that we call it as a job pool. Okay, so it is something like this. So whenever you have created any programs or any of the jobs, those will be first they'll be put in a disk. So now this we call it as the pool, that is we call this as job pool. Okay, so this is your job pool wherein you have multiple jobs like J1, job 1, job 2 till job n. Okay, you might have n number of jobs. So once these all jobs are kept in the disk or we call it as a job pool. So if suppose you want to execute any of this, what has to be done is these jobs have to be brought into the main memory and then the CPU has to be given to it. So whenever the jobs are there in the disk, we call that particular thing as job pool. And if you want to execute these jobs, what you have to do? They have to be first brought into the main memory and then the execution should start. Okay, let me give you a basic example. Okay, so the difference between this job pool and this main memory, how the jobs will be executed, how this multi-programming can be done. So say suppose you want to buy some vegetables. So first thing what you do, you go to market. So consider this job pool as a market wherein you have okay job pool it has multiple jobs, right? So we have considered this job pool as a market. Now this market has multiple shops which sells the vegetables. Now if suppose you want to you want to buy from particular shop, what you do, you go to that particular shop, right? Suppose this is the shop, that is your main memory, you go to the particular shop, then what you do, so say suppose this operating system is the owner of that shop. Okay, and say suppose this job 1, job 2, job 3, like many of the jobs, they are people. Okay, now people are standing and I mean they want to buy some vegetables. So a shop has a number of people standing for they are there to buy the vegetables. Now what does this owner do? Owner of the shop do? So first he'll not do a single task, right? That means he will not serve the first person, he'll give all the vegetables to him, he'll get the bill. So he'll not do like that, he does the concurrency. That means, so say suppose this person one, job one we'll consider as a person one. So this person one he wants to buy potatoes. So what this owner will do, he first gives the basket to this person one. The person one he selects the potatoes and keeps in the basket. Until then what the owner do? He gives the basket to the second person. Let the second person choose some other vegetable, and whenever the second person is doing that thing, give basket to the third person, right? Give basket to this third person and let him choose the vegetables. So meanwhile, what will happen? Say suppose your person one has completed choosing the potatoes and now he has to weigh for it. Okay, like 1 kg. Now what your owner will do? He was serving he was serving the person 3. He was giving the basket. He has completed giving the basket to person 3. In the meanwhile, the person 1, he informs the shop owner, like saying that, yeah, I have finished it, just weigh the basket. So your owner will come back to the person 1 and he'll serve person 1. So the same thing happens in an operating system, or whenever a in a multi-programming system. So what will be happening? So whenever you have n number of jobs, first they'll be kept in a pool. Okay, they'll be kept in a disk, and that is, we call it as a job pool. Okay, now whenever these jobs want to execute, okay, now these jobs have to be brought in the main memory, and those will be kept simultaneously in the main memory. Okay, now, the set of jobs which are in the main memory, they can be a subset of the jobs that are kept in the pool. The operating system, it picks and begins the execution of one of the jobs in the main memory. It is not hard and fast rule that whatever the job first comes, it has to be first served. So based on some algorithms, the jobs would be picked up by the operating system to execute. So eventually the job may have to wait for some task such as IO operation. Okay, say for example, your operating system, it is executing this job 1 and it needs some IO operation to be performed. So in the meantime, what will happen is your operating system, it cannot simply wait till this IO operation is completed. So your CPU would be idle at that time. So what your operating system does is it simply switches to the next job which are in the main memory, and it will start executing that particular job. Okay, so whenever the job needs to wait, the CPU switch to another job. Okay, so the first job, whenever say suppose it finishes its IO operation, what it will do is like it informs that its particular IO operation has been completed and it wants to complete, or it wants the CPU back. Okay, so that its execution can be completed. Now the CPU which was executing the another job in the main memory, it would be switched back to the job 1 so that your job 1 is executed completely. So this is the idea behind multi-programmed system. So what will happen in a non-multi-programmed system? In that case, your CPU would sit idle till the job, it completes any of the work. Okay, so I'll give you another example. Say suppose this operating system is your lawyers, and job 1, job 2, these are your cases, the cases on which the lawyer is working upon. So as a lawyer, he does not work on only one client at a time. So say suppose while one case is waiting to go to trial, or have papers to be typed, the lawyer can work on the other case. If he has enough clients, then the lawyer will never be idle for lack of work. If there is only one client, then of course he'll be idle. So this is the difference in the multi-programming and non-multi-programming systems. Multi-programmed systems, they provide an environment in which the various system resources such as your CPU, memory, peripheral devices, etc. are utilized efficiently, but they do not provide for user interaction with the computer system. So for that we have time sharing or multitasking systems. So it is a logical extension of multi-programming. So what will happen in the time sharing systems is the CPU executes multiple jobs by switching among them, but the switches occur so frequently that the users can interact with each program while it is running. Your time sharing, it requires an interactive or hands-on computer system which provides direct communication between the user and the system. The user gives instructions to the operating system or to the program directly using input device such as a keyboard or a mouse, and waits for immediate results on the output device. Accordingly, the response time should be short. That is, it should be less than 1 second. Okay. A time-shared operating system, it allows many users to share the computer simultaneously. Since each action or command in the time-shared system tends to be short, only a little CPU time is needed for each user. As the system switches rapidly from one user to the next, each user is given the impression that the entire computer system is dedicated only for his use, even though it is being shared by many users. A time-shared operating system, it uses CPU scheduling and multi-programming to provide each user with a small portion of time-shared computer. So each user has at least one separate program in the memory. A program is loaded into the memory and it is called as a process. Time sharing and multi-programming, they require several jobs to be kept simultaneously in the memory, something like this. In time sharing system, the operating system must ensure a reasonable response time, which is sometimes accomplished through swapping, where the processes are swapped in and out of the main memory to the disk. So this swapping we will see in the coming chapters. Okay. So time sharing systems must also provide a file system. So the file system resides on the collection of disk. Next, we will study about operating system operations. Okay. So as we all know, operating systems are interrupt driven. If there are no process to execute or no IO devices to service or no users to whom to respond, your operating system will sit quietly waiting for something to happen. So events are almost always signaled by the occurrence of an interrupt or a trap. A trap, or it is also called as exception, it is a software generated interrupt either caused by an error like division by zero or invalid memory access, or by a specific request from the user program that an operating system service be performed. Now, in the interrupt driven nature of the operating system, it defines the system's general structure. That means for each type of interrupt, separate segments of code in the operating system, it will define what action should be taken. If suppose division by zero exception occurs, then you have a separate set of code segment that would be executed. If suppose invalid memory access exception occurs, then you have a separate set of code that deals with it. So that means an interrupt service routine, it is provided, that is responsible for dealing with the interrupt. So the operating system and the users, they share the hardware and the software resources of the computer system. We have to make sure that an error in any user program, it could cause problems only for that particular program running. With sharing, many processes could be adversely affected by the error or the bug in the program. For example, if a process get stuck in an infinite loop, so this loop could prevent the correct operation of many other processes. Maybe for example, if you have five process and there is a infinite loop running in process one, so it has to deal, it has to cause problem to only that particular process. It in this, whenever sharing comes into picture, now this infinite loop of process one can affect the other processes as well. Okay. So the errors can occur in a multi-programming system where one erroneous program might modify the another program, the data of another program, or even the operating system itself. So without protection against these sort of errors, either a computer must execute only one process at a time, or all output must be suspect. Okay. Now we have two operations for the operating system. Okay, so the first one is dual mode and the second one is timer. First, we will check the dual mode operation. So, in order to ensure that proper execution of the operating system, we must able to distinguish between the execution of the operating system code and user defined code. Okay, there are two types. One is operating system code, that is kernel, and another one is user defined code, or basically user processes. The approach taken by most computer system is to provide hardware support that allows us to differentiate among various modes of execution. So we need two separate modes of operation here. One is user mode, okay, and another one is kernel mode. Now this kernel mode is also called as supervisor mode or system mode or privileged mode. A bit called the mode bit, okay, this a user mode and kernel mode, it has a bit, so that bit we call it as a mode bit. Now this mode bit is added to the hardware of the computer to indicate the current mode of that particular system, whether it is running in the user mode or it is running in the kernel mode. So whenever, I'll repeat again. So this mode bit is added to the hardware of the computer. Now this mode bit, it will indicate whether the process is executing in user mode or the kernel mode. Now whenever this mode bit is set as 1, that means it is executing in user mode. Whenever the mode bit is set to 0, that means the process is executing in kernel mode. So with this mode bit, we are able to distinguish between the task that is executed on behalf of the operating system and one that is executed behalf of the user, that is the user process. So when the computer system is executing on behalf of the user process or user application, the system is in the user mode. However, when the user application, okay, the user application, when it requests a service from operating system, it must transit, it has to take a transition from the user process to the kernel process. So user process is nothing but a custom application by the user. So it would be executing in the user process itself. Then at that time your mode bit will be equal to 1. If suppose your user process, it wants something to be executed by the kernel, that is the operating system, then it can be done via a system call. That means now from the user mode, it has to change to the kernel mode. In that time, what will happen is the mode bit will be set to 0. And once the system call is executed, now it has to move back to the user process and it has to start executing the pending work. Okay, so at this point, return time from kernel to user process, then what will happen is once your system call is executed, whenever it has to return to the user process, at that time this mode bit is set to 1. Then the user process can resume. Okay, so this is the transition from the user mode to kernel and then back to user process. So at the system boot, what will happen is the hardware, it starts from the kernel mode. The operating system is then loaded and it starts user application in the user mode. So whenever a trap or an interrupt occurs, the hardware, it switches from the user mode to kernel mode, that is by making the bit 1 to 0. Okay, so whenever the operating system or your kernel, it gains the control of the computer, that means it is in the kernel mode. The system always switches to the user mode from the kernel mode by setting the bit to 1 before passing the control to the user program. Now this dual mode of operation, it provides us with a means of protecting the operating system from misbehaving users, or misbehaving users from one another. So we can accomplish this by protecting designated, or by designating some of the machine instructions that may cause harm as privileged instruction. So we can make some of the machine instructions that you think it may you know uh, be used for wrong purpose, so we can mark them as privileged instructions. So The hardware allows this privileged instruction to be executed only in the kernel mode. So if an attempt is made to execute this particular privileged instruction in the user mode, at that time the hardware does not execute that particular instruction, but it will treat that instruction as illegal, or it traps it to the operating system. Okay, the instruction to switch to the kernel mode is an example of privileged instruction. Some other examples are IO control, timer management, and interrupt management. So this is about dual mode of operation. Here you have to understand how the control it passes from user process to the kernel and from kernel to the user process, and what will be the mode bit value during that time. Okay, so this is dual mode of operation. The second operation in the operating system is your timer. We must ensure that the operating system maintains control over the CPU. We cannot allow a user program to get stuck in an infinite loop or to fail to call system services and never return control to the operating system. To accomplish this task, we can use timer. The timer can be set to interrupt the computer after a specified period. Okay, the period, this can be fixed or it can be variable. Fixed means, for example, 1 of 60 seconds. Variable, for example, from 1 millisecond to 1 second. At any time, the interrupt can occur. A variable timer, it is generally implemented by a fixed rate clock and a counter. The operating system, it sets the counter, and every time the clock ticks, the counter is decremented. So whenever this counter reaches to 0, an interrupt occurs. For example, a 10-bit counter with a 1 millisecond clock, it allows interrupts at an interval from 1 millisecond to 1024 milliseconds in steps of 1 millisecond. So before turning control to the user, the operating system, it ensures that the timer is set to interrupt. If the timer interrupts, control transfers automatically to the operating system, which may be treated as a interrupt as fatal error or may give program more time. So these instructions that modify the content of the timer are privileged. So we can use the timer to prevent a user program from running too long. Okay. A simple technique is to initialize a counter with the amount of the time that the program is allowed to run. So, say a program with a 7-minute time limit, for example, we would have its counter to be initialized to 420. So, every second the timer interrupts, the counter will be decremented by 1. So, as long as the counter is positive, control is returned to the user program. And when the counter becomes negative, the operating system terminates the program for exceeding the assigned time limit. So, now these two are the operating system operations. One is dual mode operation, the another one is timer. Okay, that's it for today. We'll conclude our session. Thank you.